for interviewees' proficiency level, I mean, the 4 non-native speakers' proficiency levels largely ranged from high intermediate to low advanced. This is because the interviewees above this level have an extremely good command of Japanese, while interviewees below this level do not have an ability to maintain the conversation for 30 minutes. Moreover, in order to minimize their listening order effects, I randomly allotted one of 24 different orders of listening to the interviews to each participant in this study. Each learner's Japanese proficiency is shown in Table 1. As this table shows, the selection was made so that each interviewee might have different types of features. And participants were asked to listen to each of those 4 interviewees and to perform the following 3 tasks. One is, while listening to each interview, to highlight any non-native-like or unnatural parts in the transcripts, which means online perception. The second one is, after listening to each interview, to fill out each questionnaire on the non-native interviewee's speech, which is offline perception. And finally, after listening to all the 4 interviews, to rank the 4 interviewees in the native-like or natural order. The questionnaires were analyzed by factor analysis, and the highlighted transcripts were analyzed by means of concordance analysis. Now, I'd like to move on to the results of factor analysis. The factor analysis of this study adopted principal axis factoring and Promax rotation with Kaiser normalization, which is appropriate when the resulting factors are correlated with one another. 8 variables were excluded based on communalities, factor loadings, and interpretability. And finally, 4 factors were extracted based on script block and eigenvalues. The result of factor analysis is the 4 factors extracted with here. Factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, factor 4. And their values in their parentheses indicate factor contributions. So factor 1 is the most influential. And the factor 3, factor 4 is less influential. And in the case of oblique rotation, including Promax rotation in this study, these values, the factor contribution values, are obtained by ignoring the factor correlations, which means that we should be careful in taking these values into consideration. However, if we look at the values of factor contribution in this here, it's safe to say that factors 1 and 2 have higher values than factor 3 and 4. Okay, now I'd like to take a closer look at the components of each factor. Here is the components of factor 1. Factor 1 has more influence on the following 11 variables, such as the frequency and position of fillers and pauses, speaking without stammering, speaking without much effort, speaking without long silence, etc., etc. All of the variables are related to the flow of speech and the actual production of speech interaction. Therefore, I named this factor the interactional production factor. And then, factor 2 has more influence on the following 9 variables. The first 6 variables, from comprehending the questions exactly to making coherent, consistent statements, are all related to comprehension and the point or content. And the remaining 3 variables, such as responding sincerely, answering even difficult questions without giving up, are all related to the learner's attitude. So all of them have something to do with what's going on in the learner's mind during the speech interaction. So I named this factor interaction cognitive factor. Factor 3 has the following variables, such as L1, word mixing, translation, difficult Japanese words, size of Japanese vocabulary. So all of them are related to grammar, vocabulary, or expression. Thus, I named this factor the lexical grammatical factor. And the last one, the last set, the variables are all related to pronunciation. So I named this factor the phonological phonetic factor. Okay. This table, table 3, shows the correlations between each of the 4 factors. This table reveals that each factor has a high or relatively high correlation with the others. It suggests that the perception of the learned speech is a cognitive product of each subdivision closely interweaving with the others. Above all, factors 1 and 2, which are related to specifically to speech interaction, have the highest correlation with each other. Okay. Then I'd like to summarize the results of the factor analysis here. The interactional productional factor has the biggest influence on native Japanese speakers' perception or judgment of native-like Japanese speech, followed by interactional cognitive factor. There are 2 interaction-related factors, that is, interactional productional factor and the interactional cognitive factor, have their highest correlation of all. Interaction-related factors seem to have more influence than the lexical grammatical factor and the phonological phonetic factor.